The Christmas ornaments on my desk were still twinkling when he called me into his office, 2 days before Christmas. After 17 years of cleaning up his messes, saving his deals, and working through holidays, I sat across from him as he slid a termination letter across his mahogany desk. "Restructuring," he said, avoiding my eyes. The $3 million contract we'd just signed with Everon Aerospace lay beside it, my handwriting still visible on the sticky notes. He had no idea that by firing me, he'd just handed me the perfect gift, revenge wrapped in corporate consequences. My name is Amelia Grant, and until 2 days ago, I was the Director of Partner Support at Horizon Avionics, a title that barely captured what I actually did for this company. For 17 years, I'd been the invisible force behind every major contract, the one who transformed Brandon Cutler's half-baked promises into deliverable realities. From my corner office on the 14th floor of our Denver headquarters, I'd watch the city skyline change while I remained constant, reliable, indispensable, or so I thought. The irony wasn't lost on me as I sat in Brandon's office that December 23rd, watching him fidget with his Mont Blanc pen. Just last week, I'd worked 60-hour days finalizing the integration protocols for our biggest deal yet, a $3 million contract with Everon Aerospace. I'd missed my nephew's school play, postponed my mother's chemotherapy appointment, all to ensure every technical specification was perfect. The contract bearing his signature was built on my expertise, my relationships, my late nights translating engineering jargon into business solutions. "Amelia," Brandon started, his voice carrying that practiced executive smoothness that I'd heard him use on clients he was about to disappoint. "You know how much we value your contributions?" Value. The word tasted bitter as I watched him slide the termination letter across his mahogany desk, careful not to disturb the crystal paperweight, a gift I'd helped him choose for his 10th anniversary as CEO. The letter was brief, clinical. Position eliminated due to organizational restructuring, effective immediately. 17 years compressed into a single paragraph. "The board believes we need fresh perspectives in partner management," he continued, still not meeting my eyes. "Market dynamics are changing. We need someone who can bring new energy to the role." New energy. I knew exactly what that meant. His niece Brielle had been hovering around the office for months, fresh out of her MBA program. All synthetic confidence and theoretical knowledge. She'd been sitting in on my meetings, asking questions that revealed she didn't understand the difference between a service-level agreement and a statement of work. But she was family. And in Brandon's world, that trumped competence. "What about the Everon integration?" I asked, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. "The API authentication protocols need to be configured by January 3rd, or Brielle will handle the transition," he interrupted. "I'm sure you've documented everything thoroughly." Of course I had. Every process, every contact, every workaround for the ancient systems we'd band-aided together over the years. It was all there, meticulously organized in shared drives and knowledge bases. Everything except the one thing that mattered most, the understanding of how it all connected, the institutional knowledge that lived in my head alone. "Your severance package is standard." Brandon pushed another envelope toward me. 2 weeks per year of service, health insurance through month's end. Month's end, 8 days to find new coverage for my mother's treatments. Merry Christmas, indeed. I stood up from the leather chair, my legs surprisingly steady. 17 years of muscle memory kicked in, shoulders back, chin up, the professional smile I'd perfected during countless difficult negotiations. But inside, I was calculating. The mortgage payment due. January 15th, Mom's next treatment scheduled for the 28th. The job offer from Skybridge Systems I'd turned down 3 weeks ago because I believed in loyalty. "I'll need an hour to clear my desk," I said, pleased that my voice betrayed nothing. Brandon finally looked up, relief flooding his features. He'd expected tears, perhaps anger, maybe even begging. "Of course, Cheryl from HR will escort you. Company policy, you understand." Company policy. I'd written that policy 5 years ago after we'd had an incident with a disgruntled sales manager. Now it would be used to march me out like a security risk. The walk back to my office felt both endless and too quick. Colleagues avoided eye contact, somehow already knowing. News traveled fast in our fishbowl of an office. Or perhaps Brandon had informed them while I was in his office, ensuring no one would make the mistake of treating me like I still belonged. Cheryl hovered at my doorway, uncomfortable in her enforcer role. She'd started here just 2 years ago. I'd trained her, mentored her, recommended her for promotion. Now she watched me pack 17 years into a cardboard box. I moved methodically, taking only personal items. The photo of Mom and me at her remission party 2 years ago. The crystal paperweight the Everon team had given me after our first successful integration. The coffee mug with "World's Okayest Director" that my team had given me last Christmas. A joke that now felt prophetic. My hands paused at my computer. The Everon integration files were all there, neatly organized in color-coded folders, test environments, API documentation, authentication protocols, the custom scripts I'd written to bridge their legacy systems with ours. Everything Brielle would need to avoid a catastrophic failure. I glanced at Cheryl, who was checking her phone. My fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. I didn't delete anything. That would be sabotage, potentially criminal. But the authentication key file, the one that initialized the entire synchronization sequence, that was stored locally on my machine, not backed up to the cloud. A simple oversight in our comprehensive documentation. One tiny file among thousands. I moved it to my personal thumb drive. Not theft. It contained nothing proprietary, just a string of characters that I'd generated myself. Without it, the entire integration would hang in limbo, throwing errors that would seem like Everon's systems were rejecting the connection. The troubleshooting could take days, maybe weeks, especially for someone who didn't understand the underlying architecture. "Almost done?" Cheryl asked, clearly wanting this awkward duty to end. "Almost," I replied, slipping the thumb drive into my purse. As I carried my box through the cubicle farm, I felt their eyes on me, some sympathetic, others relieved it wasn't them. A few already calculating how to position themselves for my vacant role. The Christmas decorations I'd helped hang last week mocked me with their cheer. The conference room where I'd spent countless hours saving deals that Brandon would later claim credit for stood empty, its whiteboard still bearing my handwriting from yesterday's strategy session. In the elevator, Cheryl finally spoke. "I'm sorry, Amelia. This isn't right. Everyone knows what you do here." I corrected gently. "What I did here." The December air hit me like a slap when we exited the building. Denver's downtown was bustling with last-minute Christmas shoppers, their arms full of packages, their faces bright with holiday anticipation. I stood on the sidewalk, box in my arms, watching Cheryl retreat back into the warmth of the building, my building, not anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from my team, former team. "Drinks tonight? We're all in shock." I appreciated the gesture, but declined. I needed to think, to plan. Brandon had made a calculation that I was expendable, that 17 years of institutional knowledge could be replaced by nepotism and an MBA. He'd looked at the contracts I'd secured, the systems I'd built, the relationships I'd cultivated, and decided they were his achievements, not mine. As I walked to my car, snow beginning to fall, I thought about that Everon contract. $3 million riding on a seamless integration. Their CEO, Marcus Webb, was notoriously intolerant of delays. I'd spent months building that relationship, earning his trust, learning his hot buttons. Brandon had shown up for the final meeting and the signing ceremony. I sat in my car, heater running, and pulled out my phone. The Skybridge Systems contact was still in my recently called list. They were hungry, aggressive, looking for an entry into Everon's ecosystem. They'd offered me 20% more than Horizon paid, plus equity. 3 weeks ago, I'd been too loyal to consider it. Now I was just another unemployed professional 2 days before Christmas, with a mother who needed medical care and a mortgage that didn't care about my 17 years of service. I made the call. Amelia Grant? The voice on the other end sounded surprised. I thought you'd decided to stay with Horizon. Things change, David, I said, watching the snow accumulate on my windshield. Is your offer still on the table? David Reeves, CEO of Skybridge Systems, didn't hesitate. Can you start January 2nd? We need someone who understands Everon's ecosystem. We've been trying to crack that market for 2 years. I smiled for the first time since entering Brandon's office. I'll do you one better. I can start December 27th as a consultant. Give me a week to analyze your current approach, and I'll show you exactly why Everon hasn't returned your calls. We arranged to meet the next day. As I drove home, my phone lit up with notifications. Emails from Horizon's IT department, marked urgent, voice messages from the integration team. I let them all go unanswered, setting up an out-of-office message. I am no longer with Horizon Avionics effective December 23rd. Please direct all inquiries to Brandon Cutler. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with Mom, trying to keep the conversation light despite the elephant in the room. She'd seen the box of office belongings by the door. Laid off? She asked, cutting through my attempt at casual dinner conversation. Restructured, I said, using Brandon's sanitized term. But I've already got something lined up. Better pay, too. She studied me with those sharp eyes that cancer hadn't dimmed. After 17 years, just like that? Just like that. The week before Christmas. 2 days before, actually. She shook her head, anger flashing across her features. That Brandon never deserved you. Remember when you saved that contract with the Defense Department? He took all the credit at the company party. I remembered. Just like I remembered every late night, every weekend, every vacation interrupted by emergencies that were really just Brandon's poor planning. But I'd stayed because I believed in loyalty, in building something, in being indispensable. What about that big contract you were working on? Mom asked. The one you missed Tommy's play for? Everon Aerospace, $3 million. I took a sip of wine, feeling its warmth spread through me. They'll figure it out. But I knew they wouldn't. Not in time. The next morning, Christmas Eve, I met David at Skybridge's offices, a sleek but modest space in Denver's tech center. A far cry from Horizon's downtown tower, where Brandon had Persian rugs and oil paintings. David had whiteboards and energy. We've pitched Everon 6 times, David explained, pulling up presentations on his laptop. They won't even return our calls anymore. Horizon has them locked up tight. I reviewed their proposals, seeing the problem immediately. You're pitching features. Everon doesn't care about features. They care about reliability and integration timeline. Marcus Wiebe has been burned by vendors who overpromised. He values proven connectivity over innovation. But how do we prove connectivity if they won't even let us demonstrate? I thought about the authentication file on my thumb drive, the linchpin of Horizon's integration. What if I told you that in about 72 hours, Everon is going to be very receptive to alternative vendors? David leaned forward. What do you know? I know that Horizon's integration is complex, delicate, the kind of system that requires deep institutional knowledge to maintain. I chose my words carefully. I also know that Marcus Webb has zero tolerance for delays. His contracts include penalty clauses that kick in after 48 hours of downtime. And you think they'll have downtime? I think they'll discover that knowledge transfer isn't as simple as handing over documentation, especially when that documentation might be incomplete. David was sharp. He connected the dots without me having to spell it out. When should we reach out? December 28th, I said. Marcus will be back from his family's place in Aspen. He always cuts his vacation short to check on critical implementations. When he finds his $3 million integration in chaos, he'll be looking for solutions, not excuses. We spent the rest of the day crafting a proposal that addressed every pain point I knew Everon had with system integrations. I showed David how to position Skybridge not as a replacement for Horizon, but as a parallel implementation partner who could ensure business continuity. The beauty was in the framing. We weren't stealing a contract. We were saving a relationship. As I left Skybridge's office that afternoon, my phone had accumulated 37 missed calls from Horizon. The integration team was panicking. The synchronization that should have begun at midnight had failed. Error messages were flooding their monitoring systems. Everon's technical team was asking questions they couldn't answer. I deleted the voicemails without listening to them. 17 years of solving their problems had ended the moment Brandon slid that termination letter across his desk. His niece wanted my job. She was welcome to it, authentication keys and all. That night, Christmas Eve, I helped Mom hang the lights on our small tree. For the first time in years, I wasn't checking my phone for Horizon emergencies. I wasn't crafting emergency response plans or soothing anxious clients. "You look peaceful," Mom observed. "I feel peaceful," I admitted, and I did. The storm was coming for Brandon and Horizon, but I was already safe on the other shore. Watching the clouds gather, Christmas came and went in a blur of forced normalcy. I cooked Mom's favorite honey-glazed ham. We watched old movies, and I steadfastly ignored my phone's constant buzzing. By December 26th, the calls had escalated. Brandon himself had tried reaching me 6 times. His voicemails progressed from professionally concerned to barely concealed panic. The 27th found me back at Skybridge, officially on their payroll as a consulting advisor. David had assembled his best technical team, and I walked them through Everon's architecture, not Horizon's proprietary information, but Everon's public-facing systems that any vendor would need to understand. I knew their preferences, their pain points, their unspoken requirements that never made it into RFPs. Everon uses a legacy authentication system, I explained, drawing diagrams on the whiteboard. It's not complicated, but it's particular. One misaligned parameter and the whole handshake fails. They won't tell you this in their documentation because they consider it a security feature. "How do you know all this?" asked James, their lead developer. 17 years of integration experience, I said simply. You learn to speak their language. By afternoon, we had a working prototype, clean, efficient, and most importantly, compatible with Everon's quirks. Where Horizon's solution required multiple authentication layers and custom scripts, ours was streamlined. Better than what I'd built for Horizon, actually. Amazing what you could accomplish without Brandon's constant interference and improvements. December 28th arrived with a fresh snowfall and an email that made David whoop with joy. Marcus Webb himself had reached out, requesting an urgent meeting. "We're exploring backup integration partners." His message read, "We've heard positive things about your team's capabilities." Heard from whom? I wondered, then remembered that Everon's CTO, Sarah Martinez, and I had maintained a professional friendship over the years. She'd likely mentioned my move to Skybridge when Marcus started asking about alternatives. "We need to move fast," David said. "Can you lead the presentation?" "I'll support," I said. "But this needs to be your show. I'm just a consultant, remember?" The video call was scheduled for 2 p.m. At 1:45, my phone rang. "Brandon." I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Hello, Brandon." "Amelia, thank God." His voice was ragged, missing its usual executive polish. "We need you. The Everon integration is failing. Brielle can't. She doesn't understand the system. We'll double your salary. Triple it. Just please come back and fix this." "I'm no longer with Horizon," I said calmly. "As per your decision on December 23rd. That was a mistake. The board agrees. We'll give you everything, SVP title, stock options, whatever you want. I have a new position." There was a pause. "Where?" "That's not relevant. Brandon, I need to go. I have a meeting." "Wait!" His desperation was palpable. "At least tell me about the authentication key. The system keeps rejecting our credentials. Brielle thinks there's a missing file, but we've checked everything in the documentation." I documented everything that belonged to Horizon, I said truthfully. Any files I created on my own time, using my own methods, left with me, that's not company property. You sabotaged us. "No, Brandon." I gave you exactly what you asked for, my absence. If you'd valued my presence, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I hung up and joined the video call with Everon. Marcus Webb's face filled the screen, his expression professionally neutral, but his eyes betraying concern. Sarah Martinez was there too, along with their procurement team. Gentlemen, ladies, David began smoothly. Thank you for considering Skybridge. We understand you're facing some integration challenges. Marcus's laugh was bitter. That's diplomatic. We're dead in the water. Horizon promised a seamless transition, and we're looking at a complete system failure. Every hour of downtime costs us money. We can have you operational within 24 hours, David said, glancing at me. I nodded slightly. Our solution is pre-tested and ready to deploy. How is that possible? Sarah asked. You haven't even seen our specifications. David smiled. We've brought on a new advisor who understands your ecosystem. May I introduce Amelia Grant? The surprise on their faces was gratifying. Marcus leaned forward. Amelia, I heard you'd left Horizon. As of December 23rd, I confirmed. I'm now consulting with Skybridge. 2 days before Christmas, Sarah's voice carried disgust. After everything you did for that Everon contract? Marcus's expression hardened. Brandon assured me personally that the transition was handled, that his new director had everything under control. I'm sure she's very capable, I said diplomatically. However, system integrations require more than documentation. They require understanding. We spent the next hour walking through our solution. Clean, elegant, efficient. No mysterious authentication keys, no convoluted scripts. Just solid engineering that addressed their needs. How soon can you implement? Marcus asked. Our team can start immediately, David replied. Full integration within 48 hours, guaranteed. Marcus looked at Sarah, who nodded. Send us the contract. If you can deliver what you're promising, you've got a deal. After the call ended, David was ecstatic. This is huge. Everon opens doors to the entire aerospace sector. I smiled, thinking about Brandon scrambling to explain to his board how he'd lost a $3 million contract 2 days after firing the person who'd secured it. How he'd have to tell them that his niece, despite her MBA and family connections, couldn't replace 17 years of experience. There's something else, David said. If we land this, I want you full-time, not consulting, a real position. VP of Strategic Partnerships, equity included. I thought about Mom's treatments, about security, about building something new without Brandon's shadow. I accept. The next 48 hours blurred together in a symphony of code, coffee, and conference calls. Unlike my years at Horizon, where I'd often worked alone while Brandon took credit, at Skybridge, I was part of a real team. James and his developers hung on every insight I shared about Everon's systems, while David cleared obstacles and managed expectations with a competence Brandon had never possessed. By December 30th, we were ready. The integration was cleaner than anything I'd built at Horizon, partly because I wasn't working around 17 years of technical debt, but mostly because I finally had the resources and support to do things right. Initiate the connection, I told James, watching the diagnostic screens light up green one by one. The handshake completed flawlessly. Data flowed between systems like water finding its level. Within minutes, Everon's test transactions were processing smoothly, their monitoring systems showing all green lights for the first time in a week. Sarah Martinez called personally. Amelia, this is beautiful work. Better than what we contracted with Horizon, honestly. Thank you. Sarah, Skybridge has an excellent team. Don't be modest, she laughed. Marcus is impressed. He wants to discuss expanding the contract. Double the scope, double the value. Can David handle a call this afternoon? Double the scope, that would make it a $6.4 million contract, larger than anything Horizon had ever secured with Everon. The celebration at Skybridge that afternoon was genuine, pizza and beer in the conference room. Not the stiff catered affairs Brandon preferred. David raised a toast. To Amelia, who just helped us land our biggest client ever, and 2, Horizon's loss being our gain. As the team celebrated, my phone buzzed. A LinkedIn notification. Brandon had viewed my profile. Then another. Then a connection request with a message. Amelia, we need to talk. This has gone too far. Please call me. I declined the request and blocked him. January 3rd was supposed to be Horizon's go-live date with Everon. Instead, it became the day their partnership officially ended. Marcus Webb sent a tersely worded termination notice, citing failure to meet contractual obligations and gross misrepresentation of capabilities. The penalty clauses I'd helped negotiate, meant to protect Horizon from unreliable vendors, now worked against them. The financial hit would be substantial. But the real bombshell came that afternoon. David called me into his office, grinning like a Cheshire cat. Just got off the phone with Marcus, he said. Guess who else is shopping for a new systems integrator? I raised an eyebrow. Meridian Defense. Apparently, they heard about Horizon's Everon debacle. They're reconsidering their renewal. David's eyes sparkled. That's a $5 million annual contract. And Marcus gave us a glowing recommendation. Meridian Defense. I'd spent 3 years building that relationship for Horizon, countless trips to their facilities, navigating their bureaucracy. Now they were questioning whether Horizon could deliver without me. There's more, David continued. I've had calls from 3 other Horizon clients. Word travels fast in this industry. They're all asking if you're really here. I sank into the chair across from him, the magnitude hitting me. How bad is it for Horizon? Bad. David pulled up an industry newsletter on his tablet. Stock dropped 12% this morning. There are rumors of an emergency board meeting, and... He paused for effect. Brandon Cutler has been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into gross operational mismanagement. I felt no satisfaction, just a hollow vindication. 17 years of my life, reduced to a line item Brandon thought he could delete. Now he was learning that some assets couldn't be measured on a balance sheet. That evening, I found Cheryl from HR waiting by my car in Skybridge's parking lot. She looked uncomfortable, clutching an envelope. Cheryl, what are you doing here? Brandon asked me to give you this, she said, handing me the envelope. Personally, I'm not interested in anything Brandon has to say. Please, just read it. Things are bad, really bad. People are losing their jobs. The board is talking about selling the company. Her voice cracked. People who had nothing to do with your termination are suffering. I took the envelope but didn't open it. Cheryl, those people watched me get marched out 2 days before Christmas. Where was their concern then? She flinched. You're right. I'm sorry. We all are. After she left, I sat in my car and opened Brandon's letter. His usually perfect handwriting was shaky. Amelia, I was wrong. I let arrogance and nepotism cloud my judgment. Brielle has resigned, unable to handle the pressure. The board has lost confidence in my leadership. Horizon is imploding. And it's my fault. I'm not asking you to come back. I know that bridge is burned. But please, for the sake of the employees who weren't part of this decision, would you consider consulting to help transition your accounts? Name your price. Brandon. I crumpled the letter, then I smoothed it out and read it again. The employees, people like Cheryl, like my former team, who'd sent supportive messages but still had mortgages to pay. I called David. I need your advice on something. After explaining the situation, David was quiet for a moment. You don't owe them anything, Amelia, but I know you. This isn't about Brandon, it's about the people who supported you. What do you want to do? What I wanted was complicated. Justice had been served, but at what cost? Give me the night to think about it, I said. But I already knew my answer. I'd help transition the accounts, not for Brandon, not for Horizon, but for the colleagues who'd been collateral damage in this corporate war. But I'd do it on my terms, at my price. and with the clear understanding that I was saving them, not him. The girl who'd been walked out like a criminal 2 days before Christmas was gone. In her place stood a woman who understood her worth and who'd ensure no one would ever underestimate it again. The conference room at Horizon felt smaller than I remembered, or maybe I just felt bigger. I sat at the same table where I'd pitched countless strategies, but this time I was on the opposite side, a consultant with all the power. The board had assembled in full force, 12 faces ranging from uncomfortable to hostile. Brandon wasn't there. His administrative leave was clearly more permanent than temporary. In his place sat Margaret Chen, the interim CEO, a silver-haired woman with sharp eyes who'd built her reputation on corporate turnarounds. "Ms. Grant," Margaret began, her voice cutting through the tension. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." "I haven't agreed to anything yet," I clarified. "I'm here to listen." She nodded, respecting the boundary. "We need your help. In the 2 weeks since your departure, we've lost Everon, as you know, but the hemorrhaging hasn't stopped. Meridian Defense is reconsidering their renewal. Pinnacle Industries is requesting a performance review. 3 other major accounts have expressed concerns. All accounts I managed, I noted. Yes. Margaret didn't flinch from the truth. "We underestimated your role in maintaining these relationships. Brandon assured us the transitions were handled. We've since discovered that wasn't the case." "Where is Brielle?" I asked, though I already knew. "She resigned January 2nd, cited hostile work environment and impossible expectations." Margaret's lip curled slightly. After 3 days of actual work, I pulled out my portfolio, setting my terms on the table, literally. $250 per hour, 50-hour minimum commitment. I work remotely, on my schedule. I report to you directly, not through any department, and I want it in writing that Brandon Cutler has no authority over this engagement. Board members shifted uncomfortably. The CFO whispered something about budgets. Margaret silenced him with a look. "Done. What else?" "I'll transition 5 accounts: Meridian, Pinnacle, Arcturus, Cascade, and Northern Star. The others can figure it out themselves. I'll ensure smooth handoffs. But I won't train anyone. Your team needs to hire experienced people, not relatives." "Agreed. Anything else?" I leaned back. "I want a written apology. From the board, acknowledging that my termination was handled unprofessionally and that Brandon Cutler acted without proper board oversight. That could open us to legal liability." The legal counsel interjected. "You opened yourself to legal liability when you let him fire a 17-year employee without cause 2 days before Christmas." I shot back. "The apology isn't for legal purposes. It's for my colleagues who are still here, who need to know the board recognizes what happened was wrong." Margaret studied me for a long moment. "You've thought this through?" "I've had time. We'll draft something appropriate." She stood, extending her hand. "When can you start?" "Monday. But understand, I'm not saving Horizon. I'm protecting the careers of people who don't deserve to suffer for Brandon's mistakes. Once these transitions are complete, I'm gone." As I left the building, my phone buzzed. David, checking in. "How'd it go?" he asked. "They agreed to everything, $250 an hour to clean up their mess." His whistle was low and appreciative. "That's more than Brandon made, isn't it?" "Significantly more." I couldn't help the smile in my voice. "How's the Everon expansion going?" "Smooth as silk. Your documentation is impeccable. Unlike some companies we could mention." He paused. "You sure about helping them? You don't owe Horizon anything." "I'm not helping Horizon. I'm helping my friends who still work there. There's a difference." Monday morning, I logged into Horizon systems from my home office, a delicious reversal from all those years of commuting. My first call was with Marcus Webb at Meridian Defense. "Amelia." His relief was palpable. "When I heard you'd left Horizon, I nearly canceled our contract immediately. Please tell me you're back." "I'm consulting to ensure a smooth transition," I said carefully. But I need to be honest with you. Marcus, I'm now VP of Strategic Partnerships at Skybridge Systems. Silence. Then, the company that took over the Everon contract? Yes. The one that delivered in 48 hours what Horizon couldn't do in 2 weeks? Yes. He laughed, surprising me. You know what? Good for you, and good for them. When our Horizon contract expires in March, I'll be calling Skybridge. I assume you'll still be there? I'm not going anywhere, I assured him. Over the next 3 weeks, I had similar conversations with each client. Professional, thorough. But always with the subtle message that while Horizon might stabilize, the real talent had moved elsewhere. I documented every process, recorded training videos, created transition plans that even Brielle could have followed. But I also planted seeds. When Pinnacle's CEO mentioned they were expanding into Asian markets, I noted that Skybridge had excellent Pacific Rim connections. When Arcturus complained about Horizon's inflexibility, I sympathized and mentioned how nimble smaller firms could be. I wasn't sabotaging Horizon. I was simply telling the truth. And the truth was that Horizon had revealed its true priorities when it chose nepotism over competence. By the end of January, I'd completed my commitment. The 5 accounts were transitioned, though 2 had already indicated they wouldn't renew with Horizon. Margaret Chen sent my final check personally, along with the board's written apology. A carefully worded admission of errors in judgment regarding personnel decisions. You've given us a chance, she said, handing over the check. That's more than we deserved. I didn't do it for the board, I reminded her. Have you found Brandon's replacement? We're interviewing candidates, real ones, with actual experience. She paused. I don't suppose you'd consider... No. The word came out firm, final. That chapter is closed. As I walked out of Horizon's building for the last time, I felt none of the devastation from that December day. The company would survive, or it wouldn't. Brandon's career was effectively over. Word had spread throughout the industry. Brielle had reportedly gone back to graduate school for a different degree. And me? I was building something new at Skybridge, with equity and respect and colleagues who valued expertise over connections. Mom's treatments were covered under my new insurance. My bank account was healthier than ever. But most importantly, I'd learned my worth, and ensured everyone else knew it too. My phone rang as I reached my car. David again. You officially done with Horizon? He asked. Officially done. Good. Because Everon just referred 2 more aerospace companies to us. We're going to need all hands on deck. You ready to build something amazing? I looked back at Horizon's tower one last time, then forward to my future. I've been ready for 17 years. 6 months later, I stood before Skybridge's all-hands meeting, presenting our quarterly results. The numbers told a story of vindication. 7 new enterprise clients, $42 million in contracted revenue, and a growth trajectory that had venture capitalists circling. None of this would have been possible without Amelia Grant, David announced to the room. She didn't just bring expertise, she brought vision, integrity, and proof that doing right by your people is always good business. The applause was genuine, warm. These weren't colleagues who'd watched silently as I was marched out. These were partners who'd welcomed me at my lowest and helped me build something extraordinary. After the meeting, my phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification. Brandon Cutler had updated his profile, seeking new opportunities in leadership consulting. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who'd thought leadership meant nepotism and control was now trying to sell advice on it. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. That evening, Mom and I celebrated her latest scan. Still clear, still fighting. The bills that had once kept me awake were now easily managed. The fear that had driven me to accept 17 years of being undervalued was gone. You look happy, she observed over dinner. I am happy. And Brandon? I showed her a news article on my phone. Horizon's stock had stabilized under Margaret Chen's leadership, but they'd lost 30% of their enterprise value. Brandon had been formally terminated for cause. forfeiting his golden parachute. Industry rumors suggested he'd applied to several firms, but his reputation preceded him. "The best revenge," Mom said, raising her wine glass, "is a life well lived." We clinked glasses, but I thought about her words. Was this revenge? In the darkest moments after my termination, I'd fantasized about Horizon's complete destruction. But watching it happen had brought no joy, only a grim satisfaction that actions had consequences. What did bring joy was building something better. Every successful integration at Skybridge, every client who chose us over larger competitors, every team member who thanked me for mentoring them. That was my real revenge. Not destroying what Brandon had built, but proving he'd thrown away his most valuable asset. A year after that December firing, I received an unexpected email. Cheryl from HR, now working at a startup, reaching out with news. Horizon had been acquired by a larger competitor. Most of the executive team had been replaced. The Denver office would be downsized. "Thought you should know," she wrote. Also, Brandon applied here. Our CEO asked for references. I told him the truth about what happened to you. He didn't get past the phone screen. I stared at the email, waiting to feel something, vindication, satisfaction, maybe even pity. Instead, I felt nothing. Brandon Cutler had become irrelevant to my story. He was a cautionary tale I'd share with young professionals about knowing their worth. Nothing more. That afternoon, Marcus Webb called with news that Everon was nominating Skybridge for their Vendor Excellence Award. "You've delivered everything you promised and more," he said. "Just like you always did, even when you weren't getting the credit." "Thank you, Marcus. It means a lot." "Amelia, can I ask you something? When Horizon's integration failed, you could have let us struggle, taught Brandon a lesson. Instead, you brought us a better solution. Why?" I thought about his question. Because burning bridges only leaves you surrounded by ashes. Building new ones takes you places you never imagined. As I hung up, snow began falling outside my office window, not unlike that December day 2 years ago. But everything else had changed. The woman who'd carried a cardboard box out of Horizon's building had transformed into someone who understood that the best revenge wasn't destroying those who wronged you. It was succeeding so spectacularly that they became footnotes in your success story. My computer chimed with a calendar reminder. Team meeting, new VP announcement. I smiled, gathering my notes. Another former Horizon employee had reached out. Brilliant but undervalued, ready for a fresh start. We'd hired her immediately. Because that's what good leaders do. They recognize talent, nurture it, and never, ever take it for granted. Brandon had taught me that lesson. It was probably the only valuable thing he'd ever given me, though I doubt he'd appreciate the irony. As I headed to the conference room, my phone buzzed one last time. A text from David. "Bloomberg wants to do a story on our growth. They specifically want to interview you about building successful partnerships. Interested?" I typed back, "Absolutely." Let Brandon read about it while job hunting. Let him see what 17 years of expertise could build when properly valued. Let him understand that some mistakes can't be fixed with nepotism or golden parachutes. But mostly, let my story inspire others who'd been undervalued, overlooked, or discarded. Let them know their worth isn't determined by short-sighted bosses or corporate politics. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living proof that they were wrong about you. And I was living proof every single day. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm curious. Where are you listening from? Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your own thoughts or experiences. Have you ever faced a similar situation at work? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your perspective.